Greetings. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by the Nyaradza Group. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I'm in conversation with David Long, a business executive and director of the Beit Trust. Enjoy this informative and inspirational conversation. David Long, welcome. You have had an illustrious career. I'm delighted to have you here, David.
Trevor, thanks for your welcome. I'm not sure about an illustrious career, but it's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Well, by the time we are done, the people at home will see that you've had an illustrious career.
They'll be the judge of that. Yeah.
You are on your third career right now, David. Having started at Lyons Brooke Bond as in the marketing department, and you rose to become CEO. Talk to me about that journey with Lyons Brooke Bond.
So I studied law at university, and then didn't really want to pursue that as a career. Thought I'd like to get into the business world. I got slightly sidetracked for a period of time, coaching sport and doing teaching, which I also loved. And I think there remained a kind of love of teaching of different kinds throughout my life. It's been a bit of a thread almost. But wanted to go into the world of business, and was offered an opportunity to start out really as a kind of chairman's runner, I suppose. Fantastic experience. Then after a couple of years at Lyons, went back to university, did an MBA.
What does a chairman's runner do?
Almost like a sort of executive assistant kind of person. Mm-hmm. So was able to be exposed to a wide raft of activities and functions and what have you within, quite a complex and pretty large FMCG kind of business.
Does that thing still happen, David?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's my colloquialism for it. But I mean, I think there are people who are on executive development programs very often get assigned to work with or alongside senior executives, not necessarily chairpersons, and that was an executive chairperson position. So started to grow up in that side, gravitated more towards the marketing side, subsequent to an MBA, came back, got back into the business, grew on that side, and then became a really quite young chief executive of that business.
How young were you?
34, I suppose, something like that. So that business was owned by two large UK PLCs, Unilever and Allied Lyons. And at the same sort of time I was, and that's probably goes back to when you and I first met. I got involved in the organised industry side of things.
CZI.
I became president of CZI again at a very young age, sort of whatever it was, 36 or something like that. Then
a very young achiever, David, you were.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but then took over as chief executive of Lyons, and then had an opportunity after a few years, with changes taking place in the big group worldwide, to do what would probably be called a leverage buyout. So I put together a package to acquire the businesses that I was running. In this country, we also had significant businesses in Zambia, and a smaller business in Malawi, and a little one in Botswana.
Talk to me, David, about the thinking process. I'm CEO, then you are CEO rather, then an opportunity for a buyout presents itself.
Yeah.
What's your thinking process? Why are you doing this, and how are you going to do this?
Why I wanted to do it was because it was really an opportunity that arose because Lyons at that time, or Allied Lyons, had made a number of big acquisitions internationally. They were now focusing on the branded spirit side of their business, the pub estate, brewing, those sort of things, and were looking to exit the food side. And we were a bit of a hybrid in this country, and had grown up through an amalgamation of the old Lyons business and the Brooke Bond business. And there was no one really big enough internationally to buy the whole of the Lyons food business. Possibly Beatrice, possibly Nestle, those. But anyway, it ended up that they broke the business up into pieces. So the tea business was sold one way, the ice cream business was sold another way, and so on. We were a sort of amalgam of those businesses. So I thought, well, hey, there's an opportunity here. And my vision, if that's not too grand a word, was to build a diversified food and beverage-based kind of business in this country. And I had a number of other companies that I was planning to target. And frankly, to put together, in old-fashioned speak, a conglomerate of different businesses in this country, and to list it. So that was the plan. So I borrowed a great deal of money. That's what I mean by leverage. A great deal of money to buy the business, which package I succeeded in putting together with some backers. And then we started, or I got some of my guys to start doing memorandum accounts, which nowadays would be referred to very commonly as inflation-adjusted accounts. And before the really clever accountant guys figured that out, I said, we need to know exactly what's going on here. So in nominal terms, we were growing, expanding, increasing our profits, investing in this and that and the other. However, in back, interest rates were starting to climb. I'm talking now the mid-late 90s now. So interest rates are starting to climb. The exchange rate's starting to slide. We had June of '97 was a bit of a landmark. November of '97 was definitely a landmark where we had so-called Black Friday, etc., etc. The reality of that was that in real money terms, in sterling in this case, we were actually consuming our capital, which is something which happened in a lot of businesses in this country much later on, particularly in the mid-noughties. You saw that destruction of capital. So I decided, no, look, this is going one way.
I'm exiting.
I have to get out. So I disposed of the businesses.
Before you would talk about that, David, let me pull you back. So fast-moving consumer goods. Talk to me about the main brands or the brands that stick out for you that members of the public might either be familiar or unfamiliar with.
Yeah, so the brands that people would remember, and some of them are still around, not all of them, because the new owners, DZL in most cases, have changed that brand mix. But Lyons made ice cream would be very familiar to people. Daybreak coffee, Quench soft drinks, Rabroy sauces and condiments, those sorts of things, and Nyanga tea, Quick Brew. So we had a number of category leaders like tea bags, ice cream. We launched a number of new products.
Do you
Cascade.
Do you remember when you talk about launching a number of products? What product do you remember that you launched? The excitement, the creation of a brand from ground zero, as it were.
I mean, I think a number of examples, but I would say perhaps Cascade, which is what we call an RTD, a ready to drink milk fruit juice blend. Which did very well. It was quite a innovative kind of product at the time. So I look back with pride on a lot of the very, very good things that we did in those days with very good people in what was always a challenging environment.
In your product mix, any imports or most of them are manufactured locally?
No, the vast majority of them were actually manufactured locally. So and using local raw materials. So locally grown tea, locally grown coffee, locally produced milk and butter and so on. So absolutely beneficiation, classic beneficiation of local raw materials. We certainly had to import some things. So some of your additives and your things like flavorings and color powders and those sort of things, stabilizers and so on. But for the most part, no, we were absolutely beneficiating, local raw materials.
We are no longer there now. What would it take for us to be looking forward with the benefit of hindsight? What would it take for us to rebuild our manufacturing sector to what it was before you exited?
Significant investment. Significant investment. But also, I think one would need to target certain things in a very precise way because of the issues of scale. So in those days, it was very much still, and that was a legacy of the UDI days. It was very much still an import substitution kind of business, the manufacturing businesses. So and that was the appeal of it, obviously, because you could effectively save foreign exchange by import substituting. And the economy was still significantly protected in lots of ways by tariff and non-tariff barriers. So when the economy really opened up, a lot of local manufacturers simply didn't have the scale to be able to compete with the really big operators. So I think that, and I think you're starting to see that now. The beneficiation of some local product, but it requires significant investment and scale. And in many cases, the technology has changed massively.
In your view, David, that investment, where does it go? Into equipment, into talent, into technology? Where does it go? Where
it goes into all three of those things.
Okay.
It goes into all three of those things. But as I say, because of the issues of scale, and because we're now competing in very much in a kind of global economy, albeit that I think with some of the things that have happened more recently around the pandemic, and I think that the world in lots of ways is perhaps falling out of love with globalization because of the difficulties which have arisen through dependency on certain suppliers. So I think we're seeing a bit of a swing back towards local, sustainable, local self-sufficiency, as it were. But scale is an issue. So yeah, technology is important, but talent and so on above all. So I mean, I'm big believer in the critical importance of investing in the human capital, and that's one of the things that so excites me about the work that I'm doing on the Beit Trust side.
So how easy was it, having come in as the chairman's runner, growing in the business? How easy was it to exit in 1997?
Very hard.
When it is very hard. Talk to me about that.
Very hard.
What were the considerations?
It was tough.
Why was it tough?
It was tough because I felt I'd failed. It felt like a failure. I had this great vision, and it was on track. And then, frankly, it sounds like an excuse, but for exogenous reasons, for things beyond my control, in terms of what was starting to happen in this country policy-wise, things turned significantly. And I was then, kind of running to catch up. And because, as I say, and that was my choice, I had chosen to gear in other words, to borrow money, in real money, to buy the business, which is the only way I was going to do it. And then the value of that debt in local terms, so you're making local profits, generating a dividend, and then trying to pay off that debt, you were just running and going backwards. So I felt I'd failed, and that hit me hard. And I think that's one of the reasons why I chose not to look for another paid position, as it were, but to try and do my own thing, which was the start of what I loosely refer to as my second career, which was in the consulting advisory services space, with a legal and business background.
Talk to me, David, about, so it was painful, it was hard. Was it because of sentimental attachment to the business, or the debt issue, letting go? What was the most painful thing?
I think the most painful thing was having to accept that there was nothing that I tried all sorts of things, debt restructuring, bringing in other investors, this and that and the other. But there just wasn't a way out of it other than disposal of the businesses. And because that was literally the end of what had become something which drove me, a vision I had to grow and develop a large, essentially food and beverage oriented, and there were a number of other businesses that could have, and I hoped would have fitted into that, bigger amalgam, which would then have been of sufficient scale and interest to institutional investors to invest to list on the local bourse. So that plan was essentially scuppered, and I guess I sort of retreated almost, and then had to re-energize myself to work as I did entirely on my own. So one of the things I did start to do at that stage was mentoring, which was something which wasn't really very well understood.
Talk to me about this is fascinating and it's pretty deep. What lessons, David, did you take from this? Because my sense is every failure that I've experienced in life has taught me something.
Sure.
To some people, failure can be crushing,
Sure.
but clearly in your instance, it hasn't been crushing. What lessons did you walk away with apart from being wounded and being humbled? What lessons did you learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, humbled undoubtedly. I think that probably the greatest lesson I learned was to pay more attention than perhaps I had done. I mean, I'd done quite a lot of research and I'd consulted, people who I regarded as being extremely clued up when it came to what was going to happen, forecasting, for example, the exchange rate, those sort of things. And to get it so badly wrong. So I kind of, as I say, felt that I'd failed, but on the other hand, had to convince myself that these were, as I say, exogenous factors. These were things that were absolutely beyond my control.
And true.
So no, that's true. But,
Yeah.
I guess the lesson, the major lesson would be that, I have appetite for risk, but as an individual, I am nevertheless somewhat risk averse. So I needed to be more aware, if you like, take greater cognizance of those exogenous factors, the things that I didn't have control over, the more things like the interest rates and exchange rates and those sort of things, the regulatory environment, trade and other barriers and so on. Things like competition and that sort of stuff, I was comfortable in that space. But when you get these almost black swan kind of things happening,
Thrown at you.
it's not so straightforward. So in a sense, excusing myself, I had to do that. It was part of the process of saying, well, I'm better than this. I'm better than this.
Wow.
And I can do other good things. Look, I think I also took a lot of not comfort, that's the wrong word, a lot of strength from the fact that I had continued to be involved in other things, in other activities and businesses and what have you.
Yeah.
So I had, even when I was chief executive of Lyons, had started to have non-executive directorships of various companies. Companies like Clough, for example, the gold business. I had become very involved in the schools side of things. So as a governor of a couple of the schools, and then eventually becoming chairman of the
So
association.
it's finding meaning outside Lyons, Brooke Bond.
Absolutely. And I think that also finding things to do that fed, if I can put it like that, fed my soul.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that when I look back now, I reflect on is that perhaps I was ill-suited to a career in business. I maybe not best cut out for that. I'm certainly, one of the things I have reconciled myself to is the fact that I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a leader. I'm a business leader, but I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not the sort of guy who goes and has a swing at something with a high level of risk appetite. I'm not.
I laugh because I smile because I had that epiphany when I went to Oxford University about 15, 20 years ago. I discovered that I hated management. I hated being an executive. I loved being in a space where I create ideas and I leave other people to manage those things. I don't have the temperament of watching over things. I want to create. I want to think and not be in boardrooms where people are trying to temper around with my ideas. Is that your sense too?
No, I don't think it was that so much. It's just that I perhaps like you, I tire of the detail. But I like to think that I have certain gifts. I think. And I think that those gifts lie more in the realm of leading, inspiring, motivating, mentoring, etc. other people. And I love people, and I mean that's really my buzz. People rather than things. And how do you measure how do you measure kind of success and what have you? I think it's for me it was seeking those other avenues to reward, if you like, my self-esteem, to be blunt, which I think had been damaged. I'd been hurt. And so I needed to find validation in those other arenas. And that's why I ended up, chairman of a board of governors and this and that and the other, chairman of a company, albeit as a non-executive, those sorts of things. And I have been a non-executive director of a lot of businesses in this country. And I've enjoyed that experience by and large. I've also resigned from a lot.
I've made peace with this fate. I'm a terrible manager. I would rather work on my own, be a leader as it were, but not have day-to-day management, because I think I'm not good at that. I don't have the constitution for that.
I'm with you on that.
Interesting.
I'm with you on that.
As Nyaradzo, we strive to continuously bring convenience to our clients. Nyaradzo Group is proud to introduce Sawi, a new virtual chatbot assistant on WhatsApp. With Sawi, you are now able to interact with us from the comfort of your home and can be assisted anytime via WhatsApp. With life assurance products, diaspora products, applying and assessing your policy, payment platforms, claims information, and any other queries concerning payments, policy information, or products and services. Simply WhatsApp Sawi on +263 712 992892 or register and start interacting and receiving notifications from Sawi on WhatsApp. Now, join in and experience a new level of convenience 24 hours a day with Sawi.
David, after 25 years with Lyons, Brooke Bond, you say you've failed, but you pick yourself up. You go into your second career, into consulting, and I think we've dealt with the reason why you went in there. You go into strategic planning, change management, arbitration. What was your decision-making process there as you go into this second career of yours?
Look, I think it was pretty fundamentally, how do I put bread on the table? Where do I, how do I secure an income? And felt able to do that by a combination of those sorts of activities, but essentially selling time. So come right away from the previous plan, selling time, and selling time is all very well, but as you know, and lots of people do, when you get into a very high inflation environment, which we did on more than one occasion in this country, that can be a very big problem. You can do the work on Monday, invoice it on Wednesday, get paid on Friday. By the time the
inflation has eaten it away.
Absolutely. So that led to it was a process, but I did seek to grow my practice, as it were, but very much on my own.
How easy was it?
No, it wasn't easy. I mean, I was fortunate in the sense that I had a good network, and so I marketed myself to that network, and did a whole variety of different things. So I would act for people who wanted to sell a business. I acted for them. I acted for people who wanted to buy a business. So in an advisory capacity, but also doing a fair amount of the kind of curating the processes. So in discussion with the tax advisors and some of the lawyers and that sort of thing, but a number of other processes as well as a consultant. I mean, an example being, for example, the the demutualization that led to the creation of First Mutual Life. I was a non-executive director, and when the demutualization decision was taken, I stepped away from the board and accepted a role as a consultant to manage that process. So that's an example. So and that went all the way through to what was called an introduction to the stock exchange and so on. So those sorts of things. I've done a certain amount. I'm a chartered arbitrator, so I've done a fair bit of mainly commercial arbitration. I did quite a bit of that during that period. So transaction work, and picked up a number of other non-executive directorships during that
What
period.
did you find to be your strengths and your assets? You've talked about the network. What other aspects of you did you find to be your strengths and your assets into going into this new career?
I guess the ability to be, and particularly I suppose in all of those spaces, and it's something that I'm very conscious of, the ability to be completely independent. And that whole space of independence and governance and transparency and those sort of things, that's part of my, if you like, my kind of value set, so to speak. And that hasn't always been easy in this environment, but it's something which I like to think that I've been true to and has been valued by, and fortunately for me, sought by companies that have asked me, or businesses that have asked me, or people that have asked me to help them. And then in the mentoring space, I put myself out there to mentor, and I was only going to mentor and only did mentor either high net worth business owners or chief executives of significant organizations. And the power and the value of that is the idea, the concept of the professional friend. Somebody who, I mean,
You're still doing it now, hey?
I'm still doing it, but
Okay.
but I'm only really doing, I'm not doing it commercially any longer.
Yeah.
I do it on a pro bono basis, and particularly for younger people. So for younger people who are trying to make their way in the world, that sort of thing.
Why do you do it?
I need to, that's part of what, I used the phrase earlier, it's part of what feeds my soul, is without sounding conceited about it, I know that I've got certain gifts, I've got things to give. I mentioned much earlier on the business of teaching. And in a way, I think I'm probably a bit of a frustrated teacher. I should have maybe been a teacher. And what little teaching I did do, proper teaching I did enjoy, and coaching and so on. So I think there's an element of that. But there's just the joy that comes from helping other people to find their own solutions. So that's the key. It's not giving advice. It's teasing out, inquiring, provoking, making suggestions, this sort of thing. So it's the concept of the professional friend, as it were, the whole and
Sounding board,
all anchored in the Greek mythologies, and to help people explore, find, and validate their own solutions. And you used the word epiphany just now. I mean, I've had experiences with mentoring clients where we're sitting there for an hour, and after 20 minutes they'll say, "David, I've got to go. I've had the big aha. I've got it." And these are people who, I mean, being the chief executive of a business or being the owner of a business or whatever is lonely. And there are issues which you can't discuss
with
the other
anybody.
Shareholders. You can't discuss with the family. They're either so on your side they can't be objective and say, "No, look, you got this wrong, chap," or "What about?" or "Don't you think you should consider," etc. Or they may be part of the problem. So that loneliness of command is a big issue, and it's one of the things which also drew me into becoming involved in YPO, in the Young Presidents Organization. So,
Did you experience that loneliness yourself?
yeah, I did. Absolutely, I did.
And where did you go?
To my mentors, or to the people from whom I sought advice, solace, guidance. I'll give you a specific example.
Sure.
Maybe not many of your viewers and listeners will remember, but in the late 80s, early 90s, the government sought help for the tax department from some Australian experts. They were brought into this country to try and improve the tax take. They were referred to as the A-team.
I remember.
Remember the A-team?
Yeah.
Well, the A-team.
I remember.
Yeah. Well, when I was chief executive of Lyons, Lyons was one of the first companies to be taken on or investigated or whatever.
By the A-team.
I'm not going to give you the detail as to why, but by the A-team. So we were fully done over by the A-team. And there I was, a recently appointed young chief executive with UK-based PLC shareholders saying, what is going on here? And we had been doing things that
The proper way?
Just
Everybody else was doing.
Just about everybody else was doing.
I hear you.
That was the era of the brown paper bag.
Oh.
That was the era where legislation prevented you from increasing salaries. You weren't allowed to increase that person's salary by more than 2% or whatever it was. Those are the sort of numbers. But inflation was way more than that. You couldn't keep people because they jumped jobs in order to get a new salary, etc. It was a nightmare. So lots and lots of businesses were really done over by the A-team. They were extremely good at what they did. That was quite a chastening experience. So I had two people who were non-executive directors on my board to whom I turned. One was Dennis Norman, and the other was Stanley Mkangi. And I turned to them for wise counsel, as it were.
Wow.
So
where have you found mentoring? Where does it work the best? Is it people you approach, or people who approach you? Where does the initiative come from that makes the relationship work, is what I'm trying to say.
I think without exception, it's come from them. They have sought me as a mentor. And people in quite different spaces and with different challenges and different issues. Some, as I say, are hired guns, as I call them, suits, people running businesses for others. Others are themselves owners, trying to grow and develop a business. Others have got, family challenges. Things like transitioning a business from a founder generation into the next generation. How do you do that? Those sorts of things. So I think importantly, it's come from them. The initiatives come from them. So they had to feel a need, and B, a willingness to be very, very open. And these were just what Peter Senge, and we're doing it now, what Peter Senge used to refer to, or did refer to, as deep conversations over time. And that's what they were. So I would typically see a mentoring client once a month for an hour. If they wanted to pick up the phone or wanted to have a 10-minute chat or whatever, we could do that as well. But typically, it was a concentrated hour of reflection and discussion and the rest of it. And most of those relationships didn't last for more than several months, or maybe exceptionally maybe a couple of years. And what then happened was there was a kind of referral process. So I would get a call from somebody, and I had one. I'm still getting them. Calls from people saying, would you be willing to mentor me, or would you be willing to mentor?
Are you turning people away?
Yes,
because you're busy.
Yeah, because I just don't have the bandwidth. I just do not have the bandwidth.
I found that there are people that I look at and say, they need help. For me, that has been the biggest disappointments I've had. They need mentoring.
Yeah.
And you approach them, and you have one session because you think they need help, but they don't feel they need help. Yeah, those have been disappointing to me. Has that been your experience?
No, it is disappointing. Yeah. I mean, I think one's found that in various walks of life where there are people who just can't be told.
Yeah.
I mean, they think they've got it all. They've got all the answers, and they're masters of the universe. And they don't need help. So it requires a degree of humility. Let's face it, and a degree of introspection. And without that introspection, and without being willing to be challenged, in a how can I put this? In a space which is safe, but not necessarily comfortable, and that's key. So people will become very uncomfortable. And frankly, need to be, because that's part of
that's what you need to grow.
Exactly, that's part of the journey of exploration and growth. Exactly.
Yeah. And so you've initiated a number of successful projects. I mean, acquisitions, mergers, disposals, restructuring in your consultants, in addition to mentoring. What have you found to be the most rewarding for you?
Gosh,
is it startups? Is it disposals? Is it mentoring? Where do your juices?
I don't know that I found one or others sort of more satisfying or more rewarding than others, because I think they are all in their different ways about growth and continuity. So even a disposal, if you are disposing of a business to new owners who are going to give it fresh life and energy and so on, that's satisfying. And disposal isn't necessarily an end. On the contrary, it can be a new beginning.
New beginning.
I think startups are very difficult, very challenging. I mean, sui generis they are, but especially those that and a lot of them do become working capital hungry in a big hurry, and where you've got the impact of high inflation and limited access to capital. And maybe even shareholders who don't have the capacity to fully fund businesses, they founder, and that's true all over the world.
Let's go to what you're doing now, which is taking, you say it's taking 30% of your time, the Beit Trust. Unpack for us what this responsibility involves, entails, what you do.
Okay, so probably it varies because it's kind of flexi time, as it were, and certain times of the year are particularly busy. We've just had a particularly busy time with the Beit Trust. So the Beit Trust is 116 years old. It was founded it's a UK registered trust, founded by Alfred Beit, 1906, and initially was focused on things like communications and what have you. So a lot of the early, hence Beit Bridge. The Beit Bridge was funded by Beit. The Birchenough Bridge was funded by Beit. The bridge over the first bridge over the Zambezi, Chirundu, was funded by Beit. So a lot of Beit bridges, a lot of early airfields, railway stuff, and so on. So it spent probably 2 or 3 decades doing that sort of work as a railways and communications kind of trust, but only operating in the then Southern Rhodesia and Northern Rhodesia.
Okay.
And then by UK Act of Parliament, no less, the former Nyasaland, now Malawi, was added to the charter. So we now have 3 countries which are beneficiaries of the Beit Trust. And as I say, it's been going all that period of time. So it's a closed trust. They don't accept new funding. Trustees in the UK, UK registered trust. And so it's a classic discretionary trust where at the end of the year, I use the analogy of the orchard. The orchard has produced so much fruit.
Yeah.
We put so much fruit back into the orchard, and the rest is available for distribution. It's run in a very, very lean way. So the costs of operating are very small. Have a tiny little office with, 3 half people kind of thing in the UK, and a tiny office here with 2 half people. I'm a half, and the lady who works with me is a half. And what we do is we have several things. We're very active in, I would describe it as impact investment.
Okay.
So we give grants.
Okay.
We don't have the capacity to do a great deal in the MER space or the execution space. So we give grants to organizations and we've done all sorts of things, from building hospitals. We built the Beit Cure Hospital in Blantyre, the Beit Cure Hospital in Lusaka. We've just literally in the last couple of months opened the new Cure Hospital in Bulawayo on the old Esigadini Road,
Okay.
the new children's orthopedic hospital. Fantastic project. So those are all done with Beit money. So in the medical space, a lot of rural clinics and hospitals, we might give a grant to build a new operating theatre or an outpatients department, that sort of thing. A lot in schools. There are lots and lots of Beit halls around this country, as you know.
University of Zimbabwe,
Exactly,
Beit Hall.
UZ included. Lots and lots of Beit legacy here. We're still active in the university. We've endowed.
Have you quantified it at all? Is it possible to do that? No.
I don't. It's obviously possible, but then you have to factor in the time value of
Sure,
money. But
absolutely.
millions and millions and millions and millions of pounds. I mean, millions of pounds. It's in international terms a relatively small fund, but I would argue with big impact. So active in the education space, not only in terms of building classrooms and a house for a teacher and headmaster and those sort of things, which we do a lot of. Work a lot with the missions, but also in the human capital development side of things. So I mentioned we've just been through a very busy period now. We've literally just been placing our scholars. We have an annual master's scholarship program. Wonderful program. We will be sending this cohort that will be going out now in September. Will be 23 absolutely outstanding young people across the 3 countries, going to what we call our partner universities, mainly in the UK. We have partnership agreements with Cape Town and
any particular disciplines, or
quite a spread of disciplines. So Glasgow, for example, where we have three places a year, is the medical and biosciences side of things. Strathclyde is engineering. Oxford is 2 things. We have a full spectrum scholarship at Wadham, and we have another scholarship with Blavatnik, the School of Governance, and the young Zimbabweans going there to the School of Governance, and going to come back and hopefully be influential in the policy space.
Hope so.
Etc. Leeds, Edinburgh, Oxford, Cambridge. So it's a powerful program. So our continuing investment in human capital is something which we prize highly and continue to invest in because of the multiplier impact that has.
Absolutely.
And most of these young people either come back here and make a big difference in medical and other spaces.
You're also involved in the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship as a selector. Are you still involved in that
Not
role?
any longer.
But you were there for a while.
I was a selector. I was a Rhodes Scholarship selector. And they have, and rightly, a process of renewal, so they don't keep people there forever. They toss them out after a period of time and get some renewal, some fresh blood, which is important. So and it's been interesting for me, obviously, to contrast the Rhodes experience with the Beit experience. So in Zimbabwe, there are only two Rhodes scholarships a year. That was the allocation from Rhodes as a state, or from Rhodes as well. And the sad thing for me. The really sad thing for me is that I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that there is only one Rhodes Scholarship alumni from this country still in this country today. Sad.
Wow.
Very sad. Now, that's not to say they don't have an impact, because they may end up, in a senior position in the World Bank or something like that, and still being influencers or even champions or ambassadors in the broader sense of that word for this country. But it is sad. Beit has a much higher degree of success in people coming back. Partly it's a question of scale. We do many more scholarships a year. But the same in Malawi and Zambia, young people who come back and really do make a difference.
You're also involved in, like you indicated, arbitration and mediation rather. How much of that gets used by the business sector instead of going to court to resolve issues? Do you find there's a lot of demand?
Yeah, massive demand, and sensibly so in my view. So ADR, as it's referred to generically, alternative dispute resolution processes are very powerful and very effective as alternatives to litigation. Litigation all too often is win-lose. It also tends to be time-consuming and expensive, and very, very often it favors the big guy. It favors the guy with the deep pockets,
money, yes,
who
to pay
can
best
take
lawyers.
time and say, no, look, I'm sorry, I can't pay you for that job because I'm not happy with the quality, da-di-da-di-da. And this contractor is bleeding. So yes, so the work I have done, I'm not doing so much of it now because again, it's something that I've had to shed to make time for other things. But commercial arbitration, very, very
Are you
important.
Connected to the work that Much Masunda is
Yes,
doing?
indeed, I did,
So you
absolutely. So
you feed into that.
Precisely. So the Commercial Arbitration Centre, so Much and the guys who got that going, and I've known and worked with Much in different spaces for a long time. Fantastic work, and it's a very, very important alternative to litigation.
Yeah.
And so you'll find, I don't think there's a single agreement. I certainly haven't written or been involved in writing or
That
accepting
doesn't
an agreement
a clause
precisely that provides for typically a kind of a hierarchy where you would start with the first port of call is that the parties would use their best endeavors to resolve matters between them, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The second tier would be arbitration. Sometimes there's a provision for mediation, which is a bit different, and then which is also a very powerful process, by the way. And then litigation as a last resort.
As Nyaradzo, we strive to continuously bring convenience to our clients. Nyaradzo Group is proud to introduce Sawi, a new virtual chatbot assistant on WhatsApp. With Sawi, you are now able to interact with us from the comfort of your home and can be assisted anytime via WhatsApp. With life assurance products, diaspora products, applying and assessing your policy, payment platforms, claims information, and any other queries concerning payments, policy information, or products and services. Simply WhatsApp Sawi on +263 712 992892 or register and start interacting and receiving notifications from Sawi on WhatsApp. Now, join in and experience a new level of convenience 24 hours a day with Sawi.
David, you were adopted at Bath. I'm a big believer in purpose. And you adopted in England, where you were born.
Yeah.
Brought to Zimbabwe as a baby.
Yeah.
And you've done all these things. This is where you were supposed to be. Do you think you found your purpose?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that I certainly don't feel that I have wasted my life. And I've been very blessed, make no mistake. I'm very conscious of that. I've been very, very blessed by all sorts of things, opportunities, the upbringing that I had, very loving and enabling parents. So yeah, I think much later in life I spent more time being introspective about why I was here. Why am I on the planet? What's my purpose? What are my gifts? What
answers do you come up with?
I think it's very much in the space of back to the kind of mentoring, teaching, leading kind of space to use my gifts to help others to kind of discover theirs. So I do see myself as being, as I say, the classic mentor, the sort of someone who points the way ahead of myself, but ahead of the others as well. And part of that, again, may sound conceited, is the kind of inspirational sort of side of things, inspiring and leading and so also challenging people. So yeah, I think I certainly don't have any. I like to think I don't do regret. I've been very, very fortunate, very, very blessed, and like to think that I've made a reasonable fist of the gifts that I have.
What I find fascinating, I know I sometimes overuse this word, is your failure with Lyons, Brooke Bond, was important and part of your being where you are right now.
No question. Part of the journey. It's a journey.
Part of the journey.
Sure.
Where I sit now with adoption in Zimbabwe, I find there's no clarity in the laws. There's a huge demand for people that want to adopt. It's not very easy to adopt. Then there's cultural hangovers around, cultural taboos around adoptions and so forth. What's been your experience, given the fact that you are adopted yourself and you've had this amazing life?
No, look, I would have to confess to you with some guilt, I suppose, that I'm not au fait with the situation here. I mean, I understand that it's almost impossible to adopt a child or a baby in this country, which is appalling in my view. because, as you say, there is undoubtedly demand. There is sadly also supply, and it's horrible to talk in those terms. But I'm not up to date as to what is and isn't happening. But I'm told by people who do know that it is, as near as makes no difference, impossible to adopt a child, and that's absolutely tragic. So where do I sit on that? I mean, I'm a huge fan. I believe passionately that adoption should be something which is not only facilitated but actively encouraged for all sorts of obvious reasons. And I mean, I watch with interest things like, I mean, one of the things that we've been reminded of, I was aware of already, but been reminded of with the coverage of the Ukrainian situation, is the very large enterprise almost of surrogacy in the Ukraine. It's one of the world centers. India is another, where particularly American parents use surrogacy as a means of having their own children. Adoption, I think, is probably done much less these days because, unlike in my case, at the time when I was born, it was taboo for that was just not in line with the sort of societal mores at the time for an unmarried woman to bring a child into the world. So you gave it up for adoption literally at birth and so on. So I don't really know, Trevor. It's not something that I've been kind of driven to get involved in. Maybe peripherally. I mean, I was chairman of Childline for quite a few years. Yeah. And felt
lots of homeless children.
It's
heartbreaking stuff.
Heartbreaking, and the not just homelessness, but the abuse side of things as well. It's just awful. I don't know. You've left me, with a point to ponder.
That's good.
What maybe to is this another arena, another area where just maybe I can maybe make.
I'm happy that you're gonna ponder.
I'm provoked.
You have been blessed with 3 adult children, 3 grandchildren. What has been the process of raising these kids and the grandchildren? What has that process taught you about life?
First of all, I guess the extraordinary blessing of being a parent, and we have, as you say, 3 adult children. 2 of them are married. We've got three grandsons and a granddaughter due within the next couple of weeks. Just wonderful gifts. I like to think that we have raised, and I stress we have raised our children to be citizens of the world, to make the best of their opportunities, to inculcate in them a good value set, and I'm happy and proud to say that they have done well, not only in the sort of more conventional CV type stuff, but done well in terms of the friendships they have, the relationships they have, the areas where they have served and continue to serve, and they are fine young people, and I take huge pride in that. I do. Grandchildren, slightly different. They're different animals.
Friends tell me that there's nothing as beautiful as being a grandfather.
One of the WhatsApp groups that I'm on, there was a message a couple of months ago. A chap had said he just had his first grandchild, and one of the other people replied and said, "Oh, you're going to absolutely love it." This guy's name is Ian. He said, "You're going to absolutely love this, Ian. It's fantastic. If I'd been able to, I'd have had my grandchildren before I had my children."
I've heard that before. I've heard that. Looking at your life, it's you were so prepared in terms of the education that you got.
Yeah.
You went to Falcon College, the University of Rhodesia. You got a Bachelor of Law, University of Cape Town, Wharton, Harvard, Regent's College. That's a rich education. Did it prepare you well for life? Or we look back and say, I should have done A, B, C, D. I wanted to be a lawyer when I went to university. I couldn't. And as I joke and say to people, if I could rewind, I would want to explore and see if I have a brain to be a chartered accountant, and I get it to be a lawyer, because those are the skills I think are important. When you look back at your education, did it give you all that you needed?
I think it gave me a great deal of a kind of platform, if you like. And I mean, when I was finishing school and did national service and so on, I didn't really know what I wanted to do career-wise, clueless. And I could by elimination, I could say I didn't want to do this, I didn't want to do that, but I still didn't know. And I was advised by a friend of my father's that to do law, because it was considered to be a good broad base for almost anything, and especially to be able to go into pure law, into an LLB from the start, as opposed to doing a BA or BCom or whatever first. And I believe that with hindsight, that was outstanding advice. I think because it's a great foundation for almost anything, in my view. The law, the law to other perhaps university disciplines is a bit like Latin is to school subjects. It's a great foundation. You can't be a lawyer simply by having done an LLB, but it's a great foundation for almost anything, for careers in diplomacy or all sorts of things. And that's what I did essentially. I don't regret it at all, and it's been very useful subsequently with things like arbitration or what have you, going back into it. But I had no qualms about, when I graduated, no qualms about not going to do articles or not going to become an advocate. Both my sons read law at universities in the UK, and I think for similar reasons. But one of them, the older one, who took a first in one of the top universities, then went to become a barrister and went to the Inns of Court and all the rest of it, at the end of which process he decided, as I did, didn't want to be a lawyer and went in another direction. Fine, nothing lost. Yeah. Great foundation so I don't have any regrets. And the other things have just been additions, add-ons to enhance what I hope is my skill set. Yeah.
So you with that skill set, with your experience, you are chairman of Sitco.
Yes.
Chairman of Colcom, chairman of Tebo.
Yes.
You sit on the board of KEBS, plus other unlisted and listed companies. Where do you get the time to do all this?
It is a juggle. I refer to what I call my chaos gap. So my chaos gap.
Chaos gap.
Chaos gap. So the chaos gap is the difference between my resources to accomplish what I have to do. So that's time and skills and networks and all that kind of stuff, and what I have to do. And as long as I've got a bit of a chaos gap, in other words, I'm never quite on top of everything, I'm happy. That drives me. That's the adrenaline. That's the rush for me. But the problem is when the chaos gap gets too big, then you need somehow to replenish. And there's a difference between being tired and being depleted. And I think that's an important distinction, that you can deal with tiredness by sleeping. You can't deal with depletion by sleeping. You need to deal with depletion in different ways. So things like taking some time out, spending some time with family, going out for a meal, listening to some music, chilling, that sort of thing. So I find the time, but again, I don't want that to sound like a complaint. I'm hugely rewarded, blessed and buzzed by doing the things that I do. I mean, and they've been massively rewarding. I mean, Sitco is a fantastic story. And I've been privileged and proud to have been a part of that incredible journey. Really is an incredible journey. It's a great case study.
It's a proud Zimbabwean
is,
story.
Absolutely.
It
Proper.
is. Good on you. Good on you. I like the chaos gap. I'm going to be exploring what my chaos gap is. You talk about replenishment, resting. Your body has scars of sports. You love wildlife, fly fishing, golf, performing arts, and you used to coach. What sports have given you the knocks that make you walk around limping?
Yeah, look, the injuries came from rugby, which I played, but other things as well. And I guess I played a good deal of cricket as well. It was a great game, and I still try to follow those sports.
I don't understand fly fishing. What's
fly fishing is an art. Okay,
right.
You talked about creativity.
Yeah,
it's an art, and I just enjoy the environments in which one typically does fly fishing in this country, in places like in Nyanga, in other parts of the world. I mean, it varies, but the idea of using a lure to attract a fish, and then and in different conditions and what have you. I mean, I've even been with one of my sons to fly fish for salmon inside the Arctic Circle in northern Russia. It's just a wonderful challenge, and being in extraordinary environments, spaces, natural environment spaces, and it's not about trying to outwit the fish, because the fish is only there for one of two reasons, but just a lovely way of replenishment, of dealing with the chaos gap. Don't do enough of it. I'd like to do more.
Let's turn to our books now. The people that are out there in the world who follow us every week, David, love reading.
Okay.
Do you think reading fits into the chaos gap, or that's?
It does, absolutely. I'd like to read more than I do.
What books have you read?
Reading.
What books have you read that you'd want to share with our book-loving audience out there?
Wow, cheapest. I talk about what I'm currently reading.
Sure, absolutely.
Stephen Fry has published some books recently, retelling of the Greek myths. Mm-hmm. First one was called Mythos. The second one was called Heroes, and then he wrote one called Troy. So I'm reading. I've read two of them. I'm reading the third one of those. I like histories. I read history. I like biographies. Mm-hmm.
Which biography stands out for you? That one that you've read that has had a huge impact on you?
Biographies. Oh gosh, all sorts. I mean, a lot of the. I read an excellent biography of George Washington just recently. Palmerston, a number of those kind of almost big historical names, characters. Yeah. So it's blending the history and the biography side of things. I used to read quite a lot of business type stuff. I read much less of that now, but I do read bits and pieces. And when I say bits and pieces, I've also taken to using platforms, apps like Blinkist.
Okay.
So I get 15 minutes of whatever. Yuval Harari.
Right. Which of his books do you?
Well, the one I've read most recently is 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. Fascinated by that sort of stuff. So futurists, Peterson and others, I enjoy that. I'm endlessly fascinated by where the world's going. You talked about technology earlier on. The massive compression in the technology obsolescence cycle, the fusion, the coming together of different realms of tech, infotech, biotech. The application of increasingly sophisticated algorithms to things like medical diagnosis. Where we're going with we won't need any truck drivers because that's going to all be done by so
computers,
the whole
machine learning,
the whole machine learning, artificial intelligence side of things, and the rest of it. In many ways, I also take comfort from that by saying that by the time the worst of that happens, I'll be out of here. I'll have gone. Not going to impact me.
Wow, David, like I said, you really have had an impactful life, a rich life, a life that has impacted quite a lot of people in Zimbabwe and in the region, I think, undoubtedly. So it's really been a pleasure chatting to you. I know you're busy. It's taken us a long time to secure this engagement. So thank you so much for finding the time to be on the show. Thanks a lot. Allow me, David, to turn to our viewers who are all over the world to say thank you for watching us. Remember, we are a weekly show. We are out every Monday at 7 a.m. on YouTube, 7 a.m. Central African Time. To ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations, such as the one I've just had now with David, I invite you to click on this red button and subscribe. If you subscribe, when you subscribe, you'll get an alert when we have one of these quality conversations. We have gone a step further and created podcasts for you. Scroll down below this video, you'll find a link or links that will take you to a number of podcast platforms. Click there for your listening pleasure. We read the stuff, the team reads all your comments below each of our episodes. Keep your suggestions coming and keep sharing. Until next time, cheers to you all.